Welcome to Talking Buffalo, featuring conversations with guests from around the world of sports, media, pop culture, and all things Buffalo. With your host, Patrick Moran.
All right, what is going on, everybody? How you doing? Welcome to another episode of Talking Buffalo, your weekday daily driver for Buffalo Sports Talk and more. Today's episode is presented by Golf Dojo. Your space, your game, your time. Bring your game to Golf Dojo, Western New York's best indoor golf experience. Visit mygolfdojo.com. It is a new week here, which means our Monday episode. As usual, I am joined by my buddy down there in New York, Queens, New York, to be exact, Joe from Queens. First of what will be actually two episodes with Joe for this week. What's going on, man? How you doing?
Yeah, I don't know why I'm deciding to do two episodes with you. It's disgusting.
That is.
I didn't read the rundown after the. I didn't read your rundown, by the way, after the first line that you gave to me. Where you were going to fight me on something, and I was like, "Oh, okay. Then I don't need to read the rest of that." Trying to get combative, so I don't know what we're talking about
maybe
today.
You should have, because I do have a couple random questions that I kind of want to ask you towards the end, but kind of let me set the stage here. So again, Joe's going to be on this Monday episode, is also going to be on the Tuesday episode. We're going to do back-to-back tapings here later on Sunday night. This first one, tomorrow is actually, I'll get to tomorrow. Tomorrow we're going to talk about the Jets and Miami both being pretty much a dead even heat with the Buffalo Bills. The odds, that's what Vegas says. We're going to kind of discuss that. If we agree with that, that'll be most of what we do on tomorrow's show, the AFC East stuff. Today's kind of one of those, I'm going to let Joe, for the most part, at least anyway, fire up the Buffalo Sports hot take machine. I know there's some things that you want to get off your chest, kind of one of those maybe airing of the grievances, Seinfeld type episodes that we're going to do today. Most of this, of course, is Buffalo sports related, but I'm sure there'll be some other stuff going on as well. So that's going to be kind of what we really get into today. By the way, before we get cooking here, as much as I know some people hate this shit, I get the YouTube comments every single week. Just get to the stuff, get to the Bills talk. But like, how's your weekend, man?
It was fine. We didn't really do much. I've been working like a dog a little bit, so I worked a little bit yesterday and today.
Are you tired?
A little bit tired, yeah. I mean, my friend, we had a couple come over on Friday night, and we played. We have this mini Nintendo, like it's a mini NES. So me and the one guy, Paul, we were playing Super Contra, and we were playing the original like Tecmo Bowl, which is like from '89, which they only had like 12 teams on it, and I was terrible the first game. I think I lost like 43-14 because I couldn't figure out how to switch the guys for passing. So every pass I threw was an interception, but I figured it out. I won the next game. And then yesterday we had actually my friend and his girlfriend, who I actually hooked them up. Like I did some love matchmaking like recently with them. And they came up here because the girl had to go to some media conference.
I can't imagine you as a matchmaker, by the way.
Yeah, it was the first time I did, but they really dig each other. So
nice.
That's my third career after television and podcasting, and now that maybe as a matchmaker.
Matchmaker.
Yeah. That should be, that's what we should do. That's the new thing you should do. You want to enhance your brand, Pat? Why don't you try to matchmake some people on Twitter? Maybe like you can have this person, we'll match with them. We'll get them on the show. We could do a matchmaking segment. I have a matchmaking past, man. I bartended for many years at AJ's Lounge in Cheektowaga, and at the time when I first started there, late 1990s or like early 2000s, it was actually an AOL bar. This was before the days of Facebook, before the days of Twitter. It used to be AOL chat rooms. Yeah,
I don't know if you remember or not, but there was a Buffalo AOL chat, and I kind of, like I said, I started bartending at a place, and I kind of really dug into that chat room, and I made it a melting pot for all different types of people to come up to this little small dive bar, like in Cheektowaga, right on the right at the very edge of the city. And it was successful for a while, but lots of hookups, man, lots of relationships coming from those, lots of shit talking, lots of backstabbing, lots of drama, of course, as well, to be expected. But that was a good period of my life. That was actually kind of fun.
The AOL chat boxes, man. I did those all the time. I actually went on when I was in college. I went on a few dates off of those, like in the late
me too.
90s. That's what people were doing, and yeah, it was just weird. Like you go in there, you message someone, and you're like, "Hey, what's your age?" And
age, sex, location, ASL.
Yeah,
it would be age, sex, location.
Yeah, and then it was just so weird. And I met, I think maybe like 3 or 4 girls I met on there, like and went on dates.
Like were they completely blind dates though? Like, because in the early AOL days for young people, let me say this, there was not everybody had a profile picture. In fact, pictures were almost rare. This was almost in some ways before like high-speed internet really took off. It would take like 40 minutes to upload a photo for somebody to see. Do you ever go on any blind dates where you didn't know what they looked like?
I definitely got photos from a couple of them, and I want to say I probably did.
Yeah.
But maybe there was a time I didn't. I remember one time I went out with this girl, and it might have been a blind date, and I have no idea why, but we decided to go on a blind date to the gym. And we went to Bally's, and like this girl she was jacked, dude. Like she had like I used to lift a lot, like not a lot, but I used to lift a lot more when I was in high school, college, etc. And I used to be able to, I was like 170 pounds, and I could bench like 230, 240, which is really good. That girl, like her shoulders were bigger than mine. I was like, damn, girl. And it was one date and done. And that was
one and done.
Yeah. I mean, I was a little like, I was like, whoa. I was like, yeah. It was at that time. I don't know what I was thinking. I was just kind of meeting people, whatever. I wasn't looking for love, probably. Who the hell knows? I was 19 or 20 at the time, so I
convinced. I might have told this story before. I'm not going to rehash all the details, but I convinced Tone Pucks, of all people, to actually go to Toronto with me, a 2-hour drive to meet some girl that I met on AOL that I talked to.
Wow,
that's never seen her drive. Photo. It was a legit, complete blind date, a 2-hour trip to Canada for one as well. Complete blind date. I had no idea what she looked like, and without getting into all the painstaking details, it was a little bit disappointing.
Yeah, I'm sure she was disappointed in you too, man. You're the guy who handsome. Yeah, my ass. You're the guy who used like your prom picture for like 30 years on Twitter, and when you were like 38 years old, and I was like, you still look like this is like took it when you were 21. Yeah, so
that reminds me, man. I put up a recent on Twitter recently. I put up a photo saying that I looked like Ralph Macchio in high school, and offered a photo as evidence, and you quickly rejected that. Or was that Pucks? Maybe it was Tone Pucks.
No, it was me. It was me, and then me and Pucks agreed, because I said you looked kind of like the kid Henry Hill, the guy who played the young actor in Goodfellas who played Henry Hill, like
a young Henry Hill.
You didn't look anything. I showed my wife, and she's like, "No, you look nothing like Ralph Macchio." So no, I don't know.
All right, fair enough. Well, if the missus says that I don't, then maybe
you don't, buddy.
Maybe I've been mistaken for the last 25 years.
The thing I got you on, you look in 15 years, you're gonna look exactly like IRS. Urban Arsheister. Like you look at him now, looks exactly like you're gonna look like, dude. Like you kind of look like you look exactly like him right now. Like in 10 years, you're gonna look exactly like Urban Arsheister. So
I might actually, because we're taping this, I might actually, for people who don't know, I might throw up a photo of him right now to go over this as we dive into this.
But it has to be the older version of Urban R, not like when he was in his heyday and he had hair. Like he looks exactly like you right now, even like this. But whatever.
That's not fair. All right, let's get into today's show. Like I said, and by the way, it's kind of cold here in Buffalo. If you might, depending on what you're listening to, like if it's, a fancier listening device, you might hear a little bit of rumbling. Joe's got the air on in his Queens apartment, and he refuses to turn it off.
Yeah, sorry.
Which tells you that it's hot there, because it is certainly not hot. There is no need for no air conditioning right now in Buffalo. We're off to a very disappointing, at least weather-wise, start here in Buffalo to start the summer in early June. But anyway, all right, let's get going here. Sports hot take machine, whatever kind of, I'll turn it over to you. What's on your mind? Where do you want to start? We'll let you kind of control it. We'll let you navigate the narrative of most of today's show. Yeah.
Okay. I want to talk about Caitlyn Clark a little bit.
That's where you want to start? Okay.
Yeah, I want to start there, because I'm not going to sit here and say I watch the WNBA. I really don't. I don't have time to do anything anymore. I barely watch anything. Okay. So it's not me dumping on them, but the amount of like ridiculous, like sexist takes about about her and people being like, oh, she's being targeted because she's new and trying to make it into like this catty affair is like ridiculous. Like I've watched enough basketball before I had a kid over the years to know like when a young rookie comes into a professional league, especially basketball, Michael Jordan, like he came in and it was before my time, but I've seen the documentaries where he comes in and they freeze him out in the All-Star game because they didn't like him. They didn't like the attention he's getting. I remember when Shaq came into the league and Shaq had all this prestige, like he's going to change the game, all this sort of stuff. All this sort of stuff or whatever. And then like it wasn't like Patrick Ewing was like, hey buddy, like I'm your best friend. Let's just hang out. And like it wasn't anything like that. Like you it was your territory. And like the fact that I'm seeing so many pundits, like some people I respect, like Charles Barkley or LeBron James, being like, oh, they got to be a little bit nicer to her. Like, what are you freaking kidding me? It's professional sports, and it just shows like there's people who like that want to make it about. I've seen some people on the right side of the political spectrum who have podcasts who are trying to say like she's getting shit because she's a lesbian and she's not a lesbian. Excuse me, she's not a lesbian. And she's straight and she's white, and that's why she's getting shit. And I'm just like, who are you? And these are people who I know for a fact do not watch women's sports. They're those idiots who like have dumped on them for years. Like I've hate followed them to just hate them more daily. But the double standard of what to see in terms of that and the lazy analysis, like if you're gonna talk about the WNBA, like you should talk about like on like ESPN, you should talk about it like more of a strategic X's and O's type of thing, not like these overarching like, you know, things on like, oh, like they're being mean to her and things like that. Like, no, like that's how like she's had rivalries with players who are currently there from her college days. Like Magic versus Larry didn't like each other when they debuted, like in the pros. They hated each other. Like, go watch every documentary or read every book. They didn't like each other until like 6 years later when they did a sneaker commercial together. So like that thing has just been ridiculous. Like, and then I tweet a little bit about it here and there, but I don't have time to like put so much into it. But just the double standards are ridiculous, and like these girls want to win. Like they're not going to be this person's best friend, and of course she should be she's going to be targeted. Like a lot of them, like a lot of players who come in the league who have a lot of stuff, like they're going to want to like go after them. What's wrong with that?
Nothing in some ways, because I mean, you're right. Like when Michael Jordan was a star early on, I remember him getting kind of frozen out. LeBron a little bit. Guys who have so much hype when they come into their sport, veterans aren't going to like that, and they're going to test them very early on and make them kind of earn their respect over time. Connor McDavid, you know, when he came to the Edmonton Oilers here in the NHL, I have no problem with a lot of the females in the league being kind of like petty with her to an extent, because again, she's new and they're veterans and they've been doing this for, in some cases, for a long time. And all of a sudden somebody new comes into the league and it's all about her. And I can understand where the jealousy could come from when now there's, you know, everything is about Caitlyn Clark 24/7, it seems. But I mean, she's elevated the sport single-handedly. How many people right now are literally following, if not watching, at least following the WNBA, literally because Caitlyn Clark is in this league, Caitlyn Clark, and she wasn't, you know, a year ago, and nobody seemed, except for the hardcore fans, to really give a shit about the WNBA. Now ratings are up, and she's the biggest reason why.
Yeah, there's a big reason. Like she is like ESPN talked about her for 40 minutes the other day. It's obvious. Like, yes, she's a big part of it. And I think most of those players will say that. Like, yeah, she is, but they shouldn't be nice to her. I don't call it pettiness. I call it just competitiveness. Like you're gonna be like, she's coming in. No, it's competitiveness. Okay,
some of it's hating. And again, the Angel Reese, the rivalry goes back to LSU in college over the last couple of years. But
that doesn't happen. Shaquille O'Neal, like there's basketball highlights from the 90s of star players fighting each other. Like go down that rabbit hole. And like from like I've watched like a little bit the highlights, it seems like the WNBA is a very rough and tough league. They kind of are physical in that league, you know. Yeah. So I think some people, and myself included, like you just start watching it now, you're like, oh, this is happening. Oh, there. But like I would say most of my annoyance is like are like pundits, especially on the right side, trying to make this into like a LGBT issue, and that's just ridiculous. Like, get out of here with that crap.
Sure, that part is for sure. Yeah,
and it's coming from people who hate women's sports and have tried to make transgender athletes like making it out like LeBron James's relatives are gonna like become women and go and play in the WNBA. It's just shut up.
She's just elevating the whole sport though, and it's like,
no, she is.
If you're in the league, it's probably annoying to just hear about her all the time. But she's the reason, and
yeah, but
she's good too. Go ahead.
But sometimes you have to, like, if you feel that way, it might be because you want to beat her, and sometimes you have to hate your enemy. You know what I mean? Like in sports, like you gotta you can't, but.
Well, like leaving her off the USA women's team, that decision, the Olympic team, to me, that's at least a little bit peculiar.
Well, I don't know. The people who I follow who do follow the WNBA, like they have all said, like, look, it's tough to make that team. Like, you're not making it. Like,
I could get that.
Kind of how it is. And again, I'm not saying I've not watched.
And she's a rookie, sure.
Yeah, like how many rookies like Christian Laettner made the USA Olympic team that one year where they just were like, we need to give someone a slot away to a college player. Give it to him.
He was a whooping boy on that team.
Yeah,
though.
Yeah. And like, but that's it. There's hardly any first year college guys who go to the Olympics. The Olympics is in a month. What do you expect? So
there's a side where it's like, listen, she has elevated our sport. She deserves the respect, and don't be an asshole to her. Then there's the other side saying, well, we've been grinding in this league for years, and she comes in, and now it's all about her. Tough fence to straddle a little bit. But I will tell you this, Joe. I looked it up. So she plays for the Indiana Fever, and they're terrible. And they suck. They're 3-9. As we're recording this on Sunday night, they're 3-9. But I looked up their attendance numbers from last year to this year. They averaged about 4,000 fans per game last year. This year, 16,571 already. So their attendance is up 308% for Indiana games, and I'm sure the road games, the attendance is up too.
All those players, Angel Reese, all of them, I would think they will say, like, yes, she's a big part of the spike, but that doesn't mean they have to be super nice to her. Okay, it is competitive sports. You got to win.
But they're not. Some of them aren't saying nice things. Like Angel Reese is just blowing her off like she ain't shit. That's what I'm saying.
Like she said, she's not a good point. That's a part of basketball and sports. You talk shit.
Agreed. You're right.
Talk shit.
You're right. It's a rivalry. Agreed. I agree. Look, and it's not even.
It's good. I like rivalries. Like, who cares? Good.
Well, like Bird and Magic. If you're a Celtics fan, Magic was the bad guy. If you're a Lakers fan, Bird was the bad guy. But it seems like with this rivalry right now, it seems like anybody who's not Caitlyn Clark is the bad guy, which that's the part I don't agree with. So I do agree for the most part with you that, you know what, this isn't, you're just sitting there having a cup of tea, man. You're trying to beat the shit out of each other. Men or women's sports, it's the same. It's competitive, but she's got to earn her respect.
Like, it's just the double standards. Like Draymond Green is a guy who was beating up people left and right forever. And no one's like, oh, he's doing that because he's pissed off he's trying to get back at this player because, their prestige, or, well, he's a star player. He's doing that. No, it's a part of, like, who he is. So if Angel Reese is doing that to Caitlyn Clark, why is that an issue? Like, there's just a lot of double standards between men's and women's sports.
For sure.
Hold
on. I was just going to say real quick that I'm glad that the fact that we're even talking about the WNBA, which I've had a podcast for 6.5 years. I don't think I've ever had a WNBA conversation once until right now. Tells you about the power of Caitlyn Clark. And last thing too, again, she's no hype machine that doesn't live up to it. I mean, she's only a rookie right now, 12 games or so in her career, and she's averaging, as we're recording this, like just under 17 points, a little over 5 rebounds, and a little over 6 assists per game. She's 13th in the WNBA right now in scoring as a rookie. So this is a player who's not just good for the sport, but she's good on the court as well. I just want to make sure I throw that out there. But
yeah, what do you think of Pat McAfee calling her like
that was dumb?
Yeah, he called her a white bitch based off like trying to That's the thing. Like, there's zero nuance in this discussion. Like,
no, it's race. Some of it has to do with race too.
Like, yeah, like is there a big reason why some people like her because she's white? Yeah, I'm sure it's a part of it.
There's a
like,
lot of white
people,
women out there who don't even never watch women's basketball, probably professionally anyway in their life, that all of a sudden now are big Caitlyn Clark fans because the white straight females in the league, and she's the superstar now.
This terrible website that's a sports website that I hate, and I hate follow them. They have crapped on the WNBA forever, but they love her, Caitlyn Clark. And why? Like, you're just gonna tell me, oh, she all of a sudden got, like, you know, they know what their demo is. It's like the Midwest, and that's what they're. Yeah, like, come on. Like, anyways, all right. So moving on from that, what's my other next hot take?
Diggs.
All right, we should talk. Say again.
Stefon Diggs, I know, is something that you wanted to talk about.
Oh gosh, I mean, well, you know, he this past week he talked about how he gave another like I love Josh Allen moment.
Can I read the quote? Can I read the quote for people? Let me read his exact quote. This is what he said last week in Houston, showing some love for Josh Allen, because there's a lot of people out there who think Stefon hates Josh. This is what he said, at least publicly. Stefon said, and I quote, "When I left Minnesota, I was a good player, but I always felt more for myself. I felt like I was better than that, and that I could be better than that. And kind of up to that point, I was just like, shit, I'm going to roll the dice and bet on myself. When I got to Buffalo, Josh was and still is my guy. People don't really understand what it's like to be out there. He really embraced me. We spent a lot of time together, and I probably wouldn't be right here if it wasn't for him." Some pretty poignant words there from Stefon to Josh. All right, so go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's another quote. I mean, he said this a bunch of this times before he got traded. I don't know if that's going to put the final nail in the coffin of he doesn't like Josh or vice versa, or who knows at this point. Like, he could be lying, but we've never heard anything reported about them having any sort of issue between each other outside of the Tim Graham kind of that thing about what happened when Josh kind of snapped at him. Yeah, in the locker room. Yeah. So it's just like, I still to this day think the issue was the front office coaching versus Diggs. But the one thing I'll say this though, and we're gonna go into OTAs because I'm a little bit confused and just annoyed by OTAs, which
we'll talk about on the back half after our break. But yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Well, for this one, like, there was a viral play of like Stefon Diggs matching up against a wide receiver in OT, or I think like the first round cornerback from the Texans maybe, and like it was some guy posted it was like a slow motion, and then like the ball was delivered to Diggs, and it was really good coverage. It looked like there was pass interference too. And then there was like, the ball went on the wrong shoulder, and that was it. It was an incomplete pass. But a lot of idiots on Twitter tried to say like it was a drop, and it was like your constant Bills Xers trying to be like, oh, look at Diggs, he drops the pass. Oh. And there were some Billsagram people, like Billsagram influencers, who were trying to like get that clout, like if they could, like from those people. And it's just like, shut up. Like, are we really going to start doing that? Where we're going to stalk Stefon Diggs's like practice OTA footage and really post and like retweet and be like, oh, look, he dropped the pass, or try to, when it was obviously it wasn't really a drop. It was I don't even know what it was. You couldn't see it was just a one-on-one drill. And like for people to like get on that and like just be like, ha ha ha, like, and then in turn complain when like, when you tweet out that Tyler Bass kicked a 70-yard field goal, and then you complain about fans yelling at you because, well, he should do it in a real game or whatever. Like, we just need to stop making OTAs a thing, especially video highlights. Okay, that's all I want to say.
We'll get OTAs after the break. I want to stick with Stefon here. Do you think Bills fans largely want him to fall on his face in Houston, and now they're just anything that's negative? If Stefon drops a pass in practice, if Stefon says anything that's even remotely controversial, which he has not since he's left, if Stefon has a bad game in week 1 or week 2, Bills fans, I think so, are going to rejoice and root for him to be a failure in his new team, as opposed to, say, Miami, maybe, where like with a guy like Jordan Poyer or Mitch Morse in Jacksonville, that a lot of fans are going to want to see them continue to play well, just not against the Bills. But you feel like with Stefon, it's a different standard.
Yeah, I mean, he hurt. Whether you want to believe he wanted to get traded or not, whatever. Yes, sure. I think there is a bit of that spite towards him. for wanting to get traded.
Mm.
And you want to believe in your heart of hearts that everything the Bills do is great. It's always a smart move. It's always a low risk, high reward move. And Brandon Beane's the greatest of all time. # shades or whatever you want to do. So yeah, I think they want to like have confirmation bias of like we made the right deal. He's gone. Look at how shitty he did. And I think the only way that there will be if he plays well and Josh Allen plays really well, then maybe you can have that like, oh, you're doing your thing, enjoy. You're playing well, but at least we're playing well too. You know what I mean? But I think if he's struggling and yeah, there's going to be a lot of tap dancing on his grave, especially by people who want to get likes on Bill's X. I mean, it's a big thing now, man. Nowadays, it's just trying to get those impressions on that godforsaken shithole site that sadly I'm on it all the time. Well, not all
So am I. So am I.
You are down. I mean, you play for a freaking blue check mark, for God's sakes.
Yeah. Well, I have to because of the show. I get to do longer
It's fine. I
and
get
longer
it.
videos
Yeah,
and stuff
yeah.
like that. But anyway,
and the content pros got to do it. I don't besmirch that much.
I think I agree that a lot of Bills fans probably want Stefon to fail. I think this was a bad week for Bills fans who really enjoy hating Stefon Diggs and want to blame him for a lot of the turmoil stuff because of him coming out this past week and speaking so highly publicly of Josh Allen. I think the disconnect between you and I, and maybe you and a lot of other Bills fans, and we'll find out because there's no right or wrong right now. We'll find out come September, and for 4 months after that is I just don't think he's the same football player anymore that he was a couple of years ago. And I get a sense that you still think he's the kind of guy who could go out and go get you 100 catches for 1,300 yards. And that's what I don't see anymore with him.
I mean, I see it if he's like the primary guy. It's going to be tougher with Houston because they have so many weapons there.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if he was still here, he would have got 100 catches this year. As for now, yeah, I still think he would have. But I mean, I get if you're going to say no because they want to spread the offense now and everyone's got to eat and all that cliche stuff. But I think he's still capable of that for the most part. So
yeah, for sure.
We'll see what happens. But there's definitely going to be another eye on that dude to see if he struggles or not. It's going to be, it hasn't happened in a while here where someone kind of leaves with a lot of smoke and people being pissed off. Like, Willis McGahee left, and a lot of people wanted him to foul. And he actually was pretty good with Baltimore, and then he went to Denver, and he was pretty good. But at the same time, I think they had gotten Marshawn Lynch, and at the time, Marshawn was pretty good too. So it was easier to not care as much because you had an heir apparent. Same
sure.
when Lynch left. When Lynch left, we had C.J. Spiller, you had Fred Jackson. You can kind of like them, but this is a different case because right now they have a bunch of dudes. And you can put as many hype videos of Keon Coleman or Shakir training with Eric Moulds and all that stuff, and that's fun. Like, it's fun little distractions until the game start, and that's when I think we're going to see what happens in regards to like getting over him, in terms of like a fan or even the Bills for that matter.
Let's take a quick break, come back on the other side, and we'll talk about Joe's love, his complete and utter love.
Yeah, your love for content
Bills
too.
Mini camp and all the off-season stuff.
I'm gonna turn the AC down, by the way, too, so people can hear me clearly. By the way,
no, you're actually good. But anyway, we'll take a real quick break.
I'm cold
come back
now.
And,
it's too damn cold in this room.
Be right back, folks. All right, I am back with Joe from Queens, kind of firing up the Buffalo sports hot take machine a little bit. Caitlyn Clark, a little bit of a side bonus there as well. But all right, so mandatory minicamp for the Buffalo Bills actually starts on Tuesday. I think it goes 3 days, but usually historically Sean McDermott's let them go after 2 days. But anyway, this is mandatory, first time all off season. I know you're such a big fan of OTAs. I know you love them. You look forward to them every single year. Let the good
every
people
article,
out there,
listen to every podcast.
all the good people out there watching and listening. Let them know what you think of Buffalo Bills and just NFL in general. OTAs, you love it, don't you?
I love it. I mean, it's corny for the most part. I think there's some things that you can get out of it, and I've talked about this before. Like, this is the time of year when you can get like one-on-ones with players, because who cares? It's OTAs. I've seen it. I've seen different outlets in Buffalo. They've interviewed players one-on-one. Matt Bovee made a pizza with one of the offensive linemen because they had pizza parties. Fine, cool. Good for you. What I don't like is when, and I know there's a slippery slope, because you're told that you have to report on content, like on what you saw. And then like, you can have the asterisks of, well, keep in mind they're not playing with pads or whatever. Like, and that's where I have a problem. Like, so for instance, Matt Perino, and I usually don't name names, but I'm going to name names. I don't care. I know he's your buddy. I don't have too big of an issue with him. He said that Claypool was the number one, that he looked at the best of all the wide receivers in OTAs. Now, aside from it's OTAs, it doesn't mean much because you're not in pads or in shorts. It doesn't really matter. But he has put that in his write-ups. Like, it's just this. My issue is that you have not seen all of the OTAs. You only have been allowed to see one OTA each week because it's been like 2 different weeks. By saying that is kind of a little bit of you don't really know because you haven't seen all the other OTAs, which that's where that to me is like you don't have all the information there unless a coach went to him and said, hey, he's been great, and like I have a source that says he's been great. But that sort of stuff is just kind of like, I get it, like you got to feed the monster, you got to feed the content machine or the hot take machine like we have here. But it's just you shouldn't have something like that, because it doesn't matter at the end of the day. It really doesn't. It doesn't matter about the how a guy looks in these sort of scrimmages. It just doesn't. But there might be people out there that do care. Like, and then you share
there
stuff.
There definitely are.
Yeah, and I think, I've watched the Bills forever. I've seen enough OTAs. I've seen players like, Derek Rogers or Kwame Cavill, like all these guys who have looked great in shorts. Rob Johnson, we could even say, looked great in shorts, but it doesn't mean anything in the end. It just doesn't. And it's just a bunch of distractions. I get it. Like, I get it. I just brush it off and go, oh, and you might ask, like, what would you do? Like, what would you do? And I have told you, I would just probably try to get exclusive interviews with other guys during OTAs and think of stories that you want to do. Have like the Bills.com, they did Eric Mold's training with Shakir, which, hey, cool. I don't know if a media person could get an interview with both of them together, or like, this is the time of year to do that, where you can get like a veteran who's retired and have them with the young upstart, do a 2-3 person interview. Like, that's what it, but to cover it like it's a big event, and maybe I'm weighing it out a little bit too much. It's not a big event, but it's to cover it like any of this means anything. It doesn't mean a damn thing. It's glorified workouts. And to have guys available, I know I'm being a little bit long-winded here. I know you can go there. You could talk to Bobby Babbage, and he could have all these great quotes, and then you can go make McDermott more quotes. Great, I get that, but they talk all the time. They're going to talk in like a month for training camp. There's nothing will be new probably at that point between now and then. So you can't tell me, well, you get these interviews, in a press conference setting, because you're going to get these guys later in a month, and it's going to be the same stuff. Unless something big happens. Like, I can understand the first week of OTAs, it happened after Diggs got traded. So yeah, that's good. Perfect timing. Like, now you can ask them about, hey, you traded Diggs. What's your reaction? Sean and Josh and whoever you can find. Cool. But after that, it's kind of like, what are we talking about here?
Last year's first day of minicamp was very noteworthy and newsworthy, because Stefon Diggs, and this was mandatory camp, didn't show up the first day, or he actually showed up and then he left like right after some kind of meeting or someone with McDermott, and he bounced. So it was big news.
And that was a big deal. And that I can't be smart. It's funny though, there are guys who haven't showed up for the voluntary ones, and no one's making a big deal about that. But I get it. Like,
well, there's been one. Russell Douglas is.
I know, but no one is making a big deal about that. Whereas last year at this time, people were making a big deal about Diggs not being there, which is, hey, he didn't talk at the end of the Bengals game. he should have been stoned, I guess, is what
there was some speculation that maybe Russell Douglas is contract hunting. Tim Graham did report from The Athletic that has nothing to do with a new contract. Look, you're largely, I'll admit this, from a football perspective, I think you're largely right when you say it doesn't really mean anything at the end of the day. You know, I go back to playing high school football, and I'll never forget this. And this actually ties into the NFL and OTAs. So hopefully the story kind of ties in. But there was this kid who was new to the team early on in the season, or not season, during camp. And I remembered it so well in high school. His nickname was Theismann. And the reason why we call him Theismann is because every day to practice, he had a Washington Redskins jersey on with Theismann in the back. So we all called him Theismann. Anyway, the first like 7-10 days of high school football practice is just conditioning, you know, running, things like that. This kid ran the speed of light, man. He was unbelievable. He was so fast. He looked so athletic. He looked the part. We were raving, oh my God, what was this kid going to be? Is he going to be a wide receiver? Is he going to be a running back? Put on the pads. He sucked. He was trash. He was garbage. He was like one of the worst football players I've ever seen in my life. Once the pads came on, it meant nothing. What he looked like in t-shirt and shorts, running around, running through, or, you know, way faster than everybody. So I get it. I know Chase Claypool's getting a lot of love, and I've seen, you know, whether it was Matt reporting it or whoever else it might have been, I've seen like some of the aggregator Twitter websites posting about Chase Claypool looking the part in Buffalo and stuff like that. Probably that's the kind of story that ends up amounting to zero come August and September. So I agree with you with that. But let me ask you this question.
Let me ask you this, though, because you said you were going to fight me on this. What do you disagree with? What have I just said that's wrong?
I was just about to, in the form of a question, I was just about to get to that. What I disagree with is, let's say this is a full-time job for everyone who's covering this team. And name the outlet: ESPN, the Buffalo News, The Athletic, Syracuse.com, WGR, et cetera, et cetera. These are full-time reporters that work 12 months a year. They get paid by their employer to produce stories or content, whatever the hell you want to call it. What the hell are they supposed to do when it's this pretty much or nothing? Like, there's times of the year where there's just not a lot going on, and they still got to work and earn their paycheck each week.
I get that. And that's why I said before, like, you have to feed the monster. I just feel how they're feeding it by having, like, this guy looks like he's the best wide receiver there, which if you look at it like a couple different ways. You could look at it like that sounds horrible because he's supposed to be doo-doo, and they could show like these wide receivers are bad, which I'm not doing because it's OTAs. It's their job.
You got a little bit of hyperbole in there when you're saying that they're making it sound like Chase Claypool's the next coming of Randy Moss right now.
Well, no, we're just saying like he looks the best. He looks the best. Look, it's just like he looks the best. My biggest issue is him saying he looks the best of all the wide receivers, and you've not watched every practice because the Bills only have one practice for you to watch a week. It's just a little bit. It's not as and look, he can say like, well, what am I supposed to say? I'm supposed to report what I saw. Okay, but like when you say it that way.
Don't you feel the same about minicamp though, and maybe even in training camp as well? I feel like you.
I think training camp, I'll let you get away with it a little bit more because it is training camp and there's pads and it's a little bit longer and you can watch all of them, even though the Bills don't let you. Even though the Bills won't let you say who's on the sign. That's the other thing too. That's the other thing that makes training camp so annoying, you know, to cover because the Bills have all these rules. Like you can't say who the starters are, like who the lineup of players are, which is so dumb because it's
not a league thing though. Is that a league? Are we sure?
I don't know if it's
thing. I don't know. I don't know. I'm legitimately.
Either, I'll just say this: it's stupid because it's open to the public. Like I can go, Cover One can go there and freaking report on it, or whatever you want to call it, and say like, oh, they had a 4-man. This was the 4-man defensive line rotation, and like it's public. So what's it matter? And then that's the other thing too. Like you shouldn't take too much away from the public ones of practice, because if I'm like a scout, like the Bills strike me as very, very, they act like that is like the FBI government, like covert operations, and they're not going to run all their great plays during training camp because I think they probably think there's like a Patriot scout in the crowd or who knows. So they're going to run like all this Tecmo Super
Didn't
Bowl.
Chris Brown get suspended for?
Yeah, that's the thing. He got suspended
revealing too much information, something that he wasn't supposed to.
Revealed, from what I remember, he revealed who was on the field for like defensive line rotations.
Okay.
Because it's hard to figure out because they have the 15 man. Yeah, and that's stupid. And that's why I'm like, why? Like, why? It's just boring. It's just like there's not much you can get out of it. But again, I feel for them in a way of they get paid, they got to do that. But that's why I keep saying like this is the time of year where I think you want to do a feature story and try to get some one-on-ones with certain players or different ideas. And again, Bove did a pizza thing with the one which offensive lineman was Connor McGovern. Like I get it, he did a pizza parties last year. Fine, it was a little cheesy, but hey, I get it. Cheesy, no pun intended for pizza. But that's when you do like stories like that, but not like you're doing like a 12-minute. Yeah, let's be clear
too. You're actually in your own Joe from Queens way. You're actually complimenting Matt Bove. You're not like really shitting on him. You're saying
I would not have done that, but I get why he did that. I kind of think because I got my broadcasting crappy degree, and I feel like as a sports reporter, you should be pretty zeroed in on like doing sports stuff. And this is like 20 years ago, my logic.
I was gonna say things have changed a lot.
Things have changed. I think it was cool mentality. I would have rather, if I was like a news director, I would have rather had like the morning show guy do something with that. Not but it's fine. I get why he did it. It's cool. It's fun. I'm sure it got ratioed. I just wouldn't. I'm a little bit old school in that regard for television, but it's fine.
You think because of that, though, because you are an old school type, that maybe things were a lot different, say 20 years ago. There's not, and I'm not talking about, him as a human being. I'm just talking about the style of columnist he used to be, like Jerry Sullivan with the Buffalo News, a very old school, hard-nosed columnist who would be incredibly critical of the team, also complimentary at times as well, but that, a straight football guy is what I'm saying. Whereas in today's world, and I'm not criticizing you. I'm asking you a legitimate question. The fact that you do have an old school mentality, that maybe that's part of the reason why you don't like seeing shit like Connor McGovern making pizzas.
I did not mind that. Hold on. Don't put words in my mouth. It's fine for it. It's the off season. It's fine. I just saying, would I have had my sports anchor doing it with him? No. I probably wouldn't. 20 years ago, could I have seen that? Yeah, there were people that did it. Ed Kilgore did a lot of cheesy shit with the Bills. He was best friends with Jim Kelly. He did a lot of stuff with him. So what he did isn't like, oh my God, how dare he? I would not have done it. There are way more things annoying that I've seen by the TV guys, like with content out there that I think is a little bit much, like showcasing Josh Allen handshakes. That's a little bit annoying. I don't care.
Some media people at times, at least anyway, are too fan friendly with the team. Borderline.
I think there are some people
who fans more than hard nosed, unbiased sports journalists. That's
I think a lot of Bills content, like journalists, I think more of the TV people, they want to connect with the viewer way more than they want to connect with figuring out if the team's good or not. I think they want to connect more with the viewer, the fan. Likeability. Remember, you used to always talk about that, like before you kicked me off your podcast, or I quit. But you always talked about having likability, and I think a lot of them want to be liked a lot more, and that's.
I think you have to today. I think you have to.
Yeah, you do. Especially, I'm not well liked. I get that.
If Joe from Queens was a columnist for the Buffalo News, or you were the Channel 7 sports anchor 20 years ago, it really didn't matter if people liked you or not, because if they didn't, you were either going to read Joe from Queens and the Buffalo News each Monday, or you weren't going to pretty much read anything Buffalo Bills related on a regular basis. Same thing with the radio talk show. Same thing with probably, at least to some extent, maybe TV, maybe not quite as much. But I feel like in today's world, with so many options out there, look how many people cover the goddamn Bills, and the Bills aren't even probably one of the bigger market teams in the league. And look how many people cover them. So if you don't like somebody, like if I don't like Catherine Fitzgerald, and I love Catherine, but if I don't, I ain't got to read her shit, man. I can go read.
And if you don't like me, you can listen to Anthony Marino on Wednesday or whatever day he comes on. I get that, and it is tougher now because a lot of the market, like has shrunk. A lot of the outlets are smaller. They're losing money. We've talked about this. And sometimes I think because you're losing money and you're losing viewers, the way you can get those viewers is by being like super kind of placating to them a little bit. And, I'm not into that. And that's, hey, I'm not saying like that's the right way. I probably would have gotten canned a long time ago because I would not have played nice in terms of like, if I felt like I've talked about this before, when like, Kim Pagula gets sick and like none of the journalists want to touch that story, I would have been like, no, we're touching that. Like, she's a public figure. They're getting $1 billion. Like, we got to find out who the heir is. Like, if Terry leaves, like, what's going on? Like, I would have been like freaking, like, I would have been like Perry White in Superman 2 yelling about it. Like, we need to get an interview with Zod, like I would have been like, and maybe I hate saying old school because that kind of I think of it as like Alan Pergament old school, and I'm not a fan of that dude. But I just feel like less placating and more of like, hot takes a little bit. Like, just you don't have to like. I just think there's a lot of that, like pandering to, and there's only a few guys. Like I've called them, like I've said who I think are good: Graham, Joe B, Fairburn, Tyler, obviously. And even the hosts on WGR, I think, are pretty good, and they're fans of the team. But I think they're more honest, and that they don't care what a fan thinks for the most part. Where I think the TV guys tend to be a little bit more, Bills Mafia, centric, and trying to do that. I think that's. I know you and I have talked about that before. With you think other markets are like that? I don't think it is. I don't think it's.
I don't know that for sure. I'm assuming I don't see anything in Buffalo that I feel like I wouldn't see if. I had limited exposure to Tampa when I lived in Florida, but
Del Reed, love Del Reed. We all love him.
He'll be on the show this week, by the way, live from 26 Church. So that's a chance for me to plug that. I'm going to be taping an interview with him Wednesday at his location.
I wish I was there. He's the one. He's grandfather into my love, but but like he gets on Channel 4 and he can talk about his products and I think that does it for free on the morning show. That could not happen in New York. They would be like, you got to pay us, buddy. Like, and that's kind of how Buffalo is a little bit. It's just kind of like they're very fan centric. These new stations are very like fan friendly. And like, I think a lot of them don't want to piss off the wrong people. I don't think they want to piss off Bills fans. They definitely don't want to piss off the Bills, for that matter, because they are known to like freeze you out. And I've heard that from different people, like high up and like not just the people you have that get chicken wings with you, but I'm talking like people behind the scenes. And I think that's a big part of it. But look, do you think fans having more access to the team in recent years, primarily because of social media, like Bill's Twitter or Bill's Facebook or whatever, all the press conferences are pretty much all televised. So whether you're a media person or not, you can hear every press conference pretty much in its entirety, or just the player features, the off the field stuff that like Bills.com, Bills Embedded, Sabres Embedded, stuff like that they do. Fans having more access to the team, it feels a little more intimate and personal. I think fans today probably feel more connected and closer to their team than they did, say, when you and I were younger, growing up watching Jim Kelly and Bruce and Thurman and all these guys that didn't really have to give, the audience for the most part the time of day. But it kind of feels like it's a more, and I don't know, maybe it's like that in other markets too, but like in Buffalo, it feels like a lot more intimate, the relationship between the team, the players, and fans. And maybe to some extent, the journalists kind of got to jump in and ride that navigation. That's I would say so. Yeah. I mean, because of social media. Yeah. I mean, the Bills Mafia was created because of social media at the end of the day. And I think it's its own brand. And I think people jump on it from the local, even though broadcasters and people and fans, and they all jump on that stuff way more than was when we were younger. The only thing I can think of is like that's different is like I thought that when we were younger in the 90s and early 2000s, there was a much bigger TV presence because every Bills player had their own TV show. It felt like on Empire Sports, like there was like 6-7 of them, and there was a bunch on TV, and you had a lot more time dedicated to sports on local broadcasts. You had Sports Extra. You didn't have any issues. You could play as many highlights as you wanted to, but now you can't because you have to pay for that. a little bit more, and you can't show as many, which is crazy to me. And I think there's differences in that, but I think what's affected everyone more than anything is that because every person that covers the Bills has a Twitter, basically. 10, 15 years ago, there was no social media aside from me emailing Jerry Sullivan like, I hate you or something, or whoever. That was it. Or in the 90s, there was no email. There was you wrote a letter to the editor. And I think a lot of times maybe they were closed off to how people really felt about the team. And the only way you can listen to that was if you listen to a talk show to see how fans feel. And if you listen to the phone callers on WGR, they're horrible. They're terrible people. And I would not want to, I would run them over if I could, because they're terrible. Actually, not that terrible. They're pretty bad though. So that you weren't able to get a feel of what the public felt. Whereas in social media, if you sit on Bills X, you might think every typical Bills fan is like a psycho who wants only fun, uplifting stuff. And that's it. Whereas I'm like, I don't want fun, uplifting stuff. And maybe I'm an anomaly. I don't know, based off Bills X, maybe. But I don't know. I just feel like there's a lot. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who has worked in the TV landscape there. And they've talked about how different it was. They're my age group, like in their 40s. And they talked about how different it is, especially with the Bills and journalism, like covering them. It's completely different than it was 15, 20 years ago, where everyone is scared to cover them. Your boy Sully tweeted it out that he talked to a couple of Bills beat guys who said they're afraid to like be harsh on them because of worry about being retribution from them. And that's why I talk about it a lot. Like
I love how you call him my boy, by the way. I don't think I've talked to Sully in at least a couple years. No, but anyways, I digress. I get your point. Look, and you're not, again, the OTA stuff, content wise, I don't think you're wrong. It's mostly pointless for veterans. It's pointless. OTA stuff is mostly pointless for football stuff. It can be useful if it's a new face, whether it's a rookie or a new addition, your first impressions of that player, how would they look on the field? Maybe, if they're talking to the media, your first impressions on them, injury updates. But aside from that, for the most part, I agree. I land on, well, what the hell? What else are you going to do, man? You're a full-time reporter.
And I get that. But as I said, talking about Chase Claypool for 15, 20 minutes based on how he's looked in camp is something I would avoid. That's I would kind of avoid that because it's camp.
Content, you love saying that. By the way, I can't express it. That's content with exclamation points. Joe loves. Well, here's the thing.
This is where if you want to go ask for an exclusive interview with Chase Claypool. I mean, I know I'm making it sound like it's easy, but like,
yeah, I was gonna say I don't know that it's that easy.
It might be. Who knows? I don't know. What's the PR there for? Like, I've seen one-on-one interviews. Your boy from the Falcons got a one-on-one interview with Spectrum. I saw that on social media. So
Matt Collins?
Yeah, your boy. You love him. You think he's getting?
I do like. I'm a big Matt Collins
yards
guy.
This year.
I know, but
James Cook, 1,500 yards. I saw you and Marino were talking about he's going to get 1,500.
Yeah, he's not convinced of that at all.
I can't wait that. I'll say this. Are we almost done?
Off-season content, though. Yeah, we're almost done with this show. But again, off-season content, same thing. Chase Claypool, is he going to be good? Solid off-season discussion on podcasts.
Yeah, but you shouldn't base it off what he looks like in OTAs. That's all I'm saying. You shouldn't. It's OTAs. They got no pads on, and you're not watching all the practices. I honestly feel like the Bills probably, when the media is there, since McDermott is a psycho, he probably makes sure like they run the most basic plays of all time. And that's it. Like, well, let's run these basic things because the media is watching us. And the next day they bring out their legit guns. I'll say this though, and then we can wrap it up unless we have more topics for this episode.
No, that'll be it. But I do have after you tell me what you're going to tell me, I do have my own Buffalo Media Sports take. There is one thing that I do think is bullshit that I'm going to point out in a minute. But what do you got?
Bobby Babich. Why have they not declared him like he's calling plays or not? Like what? Why are they waiting? It's so weird, and I don't get it. Like,
I don't think he's going to. That's just my gut. I think Sean McDermott's going to continue to call plays for this year, and then maybe next year he takes over. Because I think legitimately right now, Sean McDermott doesn't know. I think he legitimately wants to see, in the training camp if he's going to be, whether it's Does Sean McDermott want to see if he's going to be able to continue to call plays? Does he want to see if Babbage is going to, what kind of job he's going to do calling plays in camp? I think he legitimately right now doesn't know. There's no competitive advantage or disadvantage to saying right now if Babbage is going to be the play caller or not if he knew and wasn't saying anything. So I don't see why he would avoid that. It leads me to think that he genuinely doesn't know right now.
That's just weird. Like, what are you waiting for? Like, what are you going to learn between now and? I mean, I just
maybe like to see him in a live setting in camp. Maybe in a live setting in camp, calling plays on the fly, do some drills or stuff like that. That might make him make a decision. That's what my gut tells me. My gut tells me I still think Sean's going to call plays for one more year. Before we go, let me give you like I said, a kind of a sports media take of my own that I actually think is bullshit. And so I'll say this. I had a conversation last week, not on the podcast, just a friendly conversation with Jay Skursky. And we were talking, and one of the issues that came up is, and everybody knows the shitty relationship between WGR and the Buffalo News that goes back several years now. And Jay pointed out to, again, in our conversation, and he wasn't necessarily bad mouthing any one person or even, necessarily the company, but it's like, what are we doing here? It's been years. Most of the people that were at the center of the beef during that time aren't even with the outlets anymore. And it would be, and I agree with Jay, it would be mutually beneficial to both WGR, to the Buffalo News, to have some of their talent on the air for WGR. I think it would be beneficial to both. And it would be beneficial to the sports fan because they're going to hear some stuff. Like, I think Jay is outstanding at talking Bills. I think Catherine Fitzgerald is really funny and she's really good at talking Bills. They're not on the air. And I think that sucks. And I think it waters down a little bit to some extent. On the hockey side, say what you will about Mike Harrington, but find me a guy who's more of a hockey guy in Buffalo than Mike. Or Lance Lazowski, who's becoming an outstanding beat reporter from the Sabres, who actually drops a lot of sports-sourced team news. But they can't go on the air. And I just think that's outdated because of a feud from years ago. And I'd like to see that change. Those guys don't go on Channel 2 anymore either. Again, stuff that's mutually beneficial. I just don't get it at this point.
Well, I think it's about the economics, a little bit of it. I mean, Channel 2, they don't go on there because Channel 2 doesn't pay them anymore. They used to pay them and now they don't. Yeah. So that's it. Like, they have their little mutual partnership. So that's why they're not there. As for GR, I believe who you want to believe. As a part of a rivalry, sure. I also think they view them as competition. They don't want their competition on there. You could disagree with that. They're competitive because
I do disagree with it.
One's written, one's verbal, right. But they kind of view it that way. And, they don't want to maybe, they did a lot before. They paid Jerry Sullivan money to do a two times a week show he did, and they paid a couple other guys and then they stopped. And I don't think it's because of the tank. I think it's more of the economics of the situation and the rivalry of they view them as competitors. And I think there's a little bit, I think, of, I've heard from the past that BN they take Buffalo News stories and rewrite them and put them up as their own when they do the anchoring news.
Sure.
That's what a lot of people have done. That's how they do a lot of broadcasting. They just take the paper and they just rewrite the stories. And I think part of that was I had heard that was a beef from at the time the news was not happy with it. But also, these outlets are, I know we see it. I make fun of the Bills bro beat and they're all buddies, but I think the outlets themselves, the people who are the head managers where they got it's cutthroat as all hell and they're losing money. I think they view it as you're not coming on here. We have to take care of our own. And you're our competition. And and I agree with Jay. I think they should, in terms of that. But I think if you're going to ask me, who does it help more? I think it helps the news way more than it helps GR. GR has the Bills. They have them on their on their channel. That is the thing. If you have that, you have the Bills, you have the Sabres. That is why GR has crushed every single radio outlet that has come to them. And I don't completely agree.
I don't completely agree with that.
Why? Why do you think that? Why do you
Because
think
for an example, as somebody who from a hockey perspective, I'll just use hockey as an example. I love Joe Yerdon, and I'm glad he gets chances to go on GR. I think Chad DiDomenicis does too sometimes, but
he does.
You know, I would probably be more likely to tune into a segment on WGR if I saw Mike Harrigan tweet that he was coming on the radio to talk Sabres, or if Lance Lazowski was tweeting that he was coming on the WGR at 3:30 to talk with Chopin the Bulldog. I probably would be more inclined to listen to WGR for that segment if I wasn't already, because of those guys. Mark Gaughan. I'd love to hear Mark Gaughan talk some football on the air. Again, they get Joe Marino on, they get Matt Perino on, they get Aaron Quinn and Greg Thompson on. Good for all them, and that's fine. But I also would like to see Mark Gaughan or Jay Skursky or Catherine Fitzgerald come on WGR to talk Bills. And look, maybe there's some details on the Buffalo News side that I don't know about, that I'm not privy to. Maybe there's other reasons below the surface too that they're not coming on. So I'm not going to just sit there and bash GR and say, well, TV, Buffalo News, this and that. I don't know. It just sucks. I think it's something that would bring more to, again,
well, I think
mutually beneficial. I think Jay was right with that. Go ahead.
I don't know if I would say I don't think it's as beneficial for GR. I don't, because the reason why is they have other people they can get onto their platform. You just named all of them. They also have terrible callers. They can have Sal Capaccio come on every day, twice almost every freaking show he comes on. They have other options. The problem with the news, and we've talked about this before, they have no podcast network. They got one podcast, I think, with I forgot what it's called, Play Action or something. I don't know. No one talks about it.
Ben might beef with Josh Barnett was in charge of Buffalo News. I talked to him quite often, and it was always my beef with the news. Like, where's your interactive?
Well, they didn't.
He said it was a lot harder than it seems on the surface because of contracts and money and
union and all that, and that's on them. So many that's why I think they need them more to do that than GR needs them, to be honest. Sure. And another thing too, real quick, like, a lot of the people at the news, like, they don't have I like columnists, because I even love to hate them. I think that is where you put it on ESPN, and look, you can hate ESPN all you freaking want. I get it. But at the end of the day, the people who are making money for that are guys who have hot takes. And there's none of that at the Buffalo News, I feel, as of right now. It's a lot. I agree. They've changed that format. I was for, I've said this before, I was for Bucky and Sully to leave. I had thought they were there for too long, and it was very predictable what they were going to say. I wanted new blood in there that was going to be like a younger voice of opinions. They have not really delivered that. There's like hybrids versions of them, and I don't really get it, to be honest with you. And we're talking, this is 7 years later, and they haven't found, with you. And I think, would they be that interesting on the radio? Where I think on radio, you have to have all those guys, Jeremy, Choate, Bulldog, DiBiase, they all have hot takes. They have takes. What you want hot takes or whatever, they're takes.
You can add Nate Gary to that too. Sure.
Nate Gary, yeah. Are the guys you're going to bring on, are they going to bring the same heat, if you will? I don't know, because they don't write in a column sense. The only thing I see is Bill's X stuff, really, and like reporting on stuff. And some of them do, like Harrington, sure, I'll give him that. That guy's, he's got opinions till Shangri-La. But there's other guys that I don't really know. From reading their stuff, I don't see opinions coming out of it. And that's
they're more straight beat reporters than
a little bit of that. Whereas
Harrington's more of a hybrid. Harrington will have columns to go along with some actual reporting as well.
But anyways, that's it. All right, let's wrap this up. So I can put
we're gonna get out of here for today. I'm actually gonna be back again with Joe tomorrow. So for Joe, I'm Patrick. Tomorrow we're gonna talk about the AFC East again. Bills, Miami, the Jets. It is a deadlock, pretty much a dead heat when it comes to who's the betting favorite. We'll kind of dive into that some tomorrow. So be right back with you then.